The sun beat down mercilessly on the small village, turning the ground into cracked, lifeless earth. Nothing had grown here for 3 long years. The fields that once held corn and vegetables now looked like a desert. In a tiny mud house at the edge of the village, Samuel sat with his head in his hands. His wife Grace stood by the window, her eyes empty and tired. Between them sat their oldest daughter, Amara, a 14-year-old girl with bright eyes that still held dreams despite the hunger that gnawed at her belly every single day. Samuel finally spoke, his voice rough and broken. "We have no choice left. The children are starving. Your mother is sick. We've sold everything we own." Grace turned away, unable to look at her daughter. She knew what was coming. They had discussed it in whispers for weeks, always when Amara was out fetching water or helping the neighbors. Amara looked between her parents, confusion mixed with growing fear. "What do you mean, Father? What are you saying?" Samuel couldn't meet her eyes. "Baba Kofi has made an offer. A good offer. He will give us a breeding cow. With that cow, we can have milk for the little ones. Eventually, we can have more cows. We can survive." "That's wonderful," Amara said, relief flooding her voice. "A cow would save us all." But then she saw her mother's shoulders shaking. She saw her father's clenched fists. And she understood. The cold reality hit her like a bucket of ice water. "No," she whispered. "No, please, no." "It's already decided," Samuel said, standing up quickly, turning his back to her. "Baba Kofi will come tomorrow. You will go with him. You will be his wife." Amara jumped to her feet, panic rising in her chest. "But he's an old man. He's older than grandfather was. I'm only 14. I want to finish school. I want to be a teacher." Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her young face. Grace finally turned around, her own face wet with tears. "Do you think I want this? Do you think this is easy for me? But your brothers and sisters are dying, Amara. They cry themselves to sleep every night from hunger. Your little sister Kemi is so weak she can barely walk anymore. Then I'll work," Amara pleaded. "I'll find work in the city. I'll send money." "Please don't do this." But Samuel shook his head slowly. "No one is hiring. There are no jobs. The whole region is dying. This is the only way." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay on her mat, listening to her younger siblings breathing in the darkness. Little Kemi curled up beside her, her tiny body nothing but skin and bones. Her brothers, once so full of energy and mischief, now barely had the strength to play. Amara understood her parents' desperation, but understanding didn't make the terror go away. The next morning came too quickly. Amara heard the commotion outside before she saw anything. The entire village seemed to have gathered. News traveled fast in small places, and everyone wanted to witness the transaction. Some faces showed pity. Others showed approval. Many showed nothing at all, just the blank acceptance of people who had seen too much suffering to feel anything anymore. Then she saw him. Baba Kofi arrived on an old motorcycle, and behind him, led by a rope, walked the most beautiful cow Amara had ever seen. It was healthy, well-fed, its coat shining in the morning sun. In a village where animals were as skinny as the people, this cow looked like it came from another world. This single animal represented life itself: milk, butter, cheese, eventually, calves, hope. Baba Kofi was exactly as she remembered from seeing him at the market. Tall but bent with age, his face weathered like old leather, his hair completely white. He walked with a walking stick, his movements slow but steady. He wasn't cruel-looking. He wasn't kind-looking either. He was just old. So terribly, impossibly old. The village elders came forward, performing the traditional rituals. They spoke words about duty and survival. They blessed the arrangement. They called it necessary. They called it proper. Not one of them looked at Amara's face. Not one of them acknowledged her silent tears or her trembling hands. Samuel took the cow's rope, his hand shaking slightly. He finally looked at his daughter, and for just a moment she saw shame in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by the hardness of a man who had made his choice and would live with it. "Go pack your things," he said quietly. Amara had so few possessions it took only minutes. A change of clothes, her school books, though she knew she'd never open them again. A small wooden bird her grandfather had carved for her years ago. That was it. That was all she had to show for 14 years of life. Her mother hugged her tightly. whispering apologies that meant nothing and changed nothing. Her siblings clung to her legs, not fully understanding what was happening, but sensing something terrible. Little Kemi looked up at her with huge, confused eyes. "Are you going away, sister? Will you come back?" Amara couldn't answer. She just kissed the top of Kemi's head and gently pulled away. Baba Kofi gestured toward his motorcycle. "Come, it's time." His voice was neither harsh nor gentle. It was simply matter-of-fact, as if he were picking up purchased goods from the market. As Amara climbed onto the back of the motorcycle, she took one last look at her home. At the cracked earth. At her family. At the village that had let this happen without protest. She saw the cow being led into her family's small yard, saw her father's hands running over its sides, already calculating its value in milk and offspring. The motorcycle roared to life. Amara wrapped her arms around the old man's waist because she had to keep from falling. As they drove away, she watched her village grow smaller and smaller behind them. She watched until she couldn't see it anymore. She watched until everything she had ever known disappeared completely. The road ahead was dusty and long. Amara had no idea where she was going. She had no idea what would happen to her. She only knew that she had been sold for a cow, and that her childhood had ended the moment that transaction was complete. At 14 years old, her life as she knew it was over. Whatever came next belonged to Baba Kofi now. The wind dried her tears as they rode, but it couldn't touch the ones still falling inside her heart. The motorcycle finally stopped in front of a compound that looked nothing like Amara had expected. Instead of poverty, she saw a well-maintained property with strong fences and several buildings. Baba Kofi's wealth was obvious. There were chickens wandering freely, goats in a pen, and in the distance she could see more cattle grazing. This man had everything. Why would he need to buy a child bride? Amara's whole body was tense as she climbed off the motorcycle. Her mind raced with terrible possibilities. She had heard stories from other girls in her village. Stories whispered when adults weren't listening. Stories about what happened to young girls who were given to old men. Her hands trembled as she clutched her small bag of belongings. Baba Kofi said nothing as he walked toward the main house. Amara followed, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. But then he walked right past the main house. He led her to a smaller cottage at the back of the compound, separated from everything else by a small garden that had somehow survived the drought. He opened the door and gestured inside. "This is where you will stay." Amara stood frozen, confused. I don't understand." "You will live here," Baba Kofi repeated, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Alone. The main house is mine. This cottage is yours. You will keep it clean. You will help cook the meals. You will manage the household." "That is all? That is all?" Amara whispered, afraid to believe what she was hearing. Baba Kofi nodded once, then turned to leave. "I will have food brought to you. Rest tonight. Tomorrow I will show you your duties." And then he was gone, walking back toward the main house with his slow, steady steps. Amara stood in the doorway of the cottage, her mind spinning. She had expected the worst. She had prepared herself for horror. But this was something she couldn't make sense of. Slowly, carefully, she stepped inside. The cottage was simple but clean. A bed with actual sheets and a pillow, a small table and chair, a cupboard for clothes, a window that let in the evening light. It was nicer than anywhere she had ever slept in her entire life. Her family's house had mats on the floor and shared everything. Here she had her own space. That first night, Amara barely slept. She kept waiting for the door to open, kept waiting for Baba Kofi to come and claim what he had bought. But he never came. The compound was quiet except for the normal sounds of animals and wind. When morning finally arrived, she was exhausted but relieved. She had survived one night. Over the following days, a routine developed. An older woman from the village, Auntie Fatima, came each morning to show Amara her tasks. Cook the meals, sweep the compound, wash the clothes, feed the chickens, all normal household work, nothing more. Auntie Fatima was kind but curious, always watching Amara with questioning eyes, probably wondering the same thing Amara wondered. Why had Baba Kofi really brought her here? Baba Kofi himself remained distant. He ate his meals in silence. He worked with his cattle. He spoke only when necessary, giving instructions or asking simple questions. Is the food ready? Did you feed the goats? The fence needs repair. Nothing personal. Nothing threatening. But Amara noticed things. She noticed how every evening Baba Kofi would sit on his porch alone, staring at nothing. She noticed the photograph on his wall, a faded picture of a beautiful woman with a gentle smile. She noticed how he sometimes spoke to that photograph when he thought no one was listening. "I miss you," he would say softly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." One day, about 2 weeks after Amara arrived, she accidentally knocked over a box while cleaning the main house. Photographs spilled across the floor. Baba Kofi's photographs, his whole life in pictures. She saw him as a young man, handsome and strong. She saw him with the woman from the wall photograph, clearly his wife. They looked happy. They looked in love. "What are you doing?" Baba Kofi's voice made her jump. She hadn't heard him come in. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just cleaning and—" Amara scrambled to pick up the photos, her hands shaking. But Baba Kofi didn't sound angry. He sounded tired. So very tired. He sat down heavily in his chair and picked up one of the photographs. It showed him and his wife standing in front of this very house many years ago. "Her name was Adana," he said quietly. "She died 5 years ago, cancer. I couldn't save her. All my money, all my cattle meant nothing. I couldn't save her." Amara didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. She just listened. "We had no children," Baba Kofi continued, still staring at the photo. "She couldn't have them. The whole village judged her for it, called her cursed, called her useless. But I loved her anyway. I didn't care about children. I only cared about her." He was quiet for a long moment, and Amara thought he was finished. But then he spoke again, his voice even softer. "After she died, the village elders came to me. They said I needed a new wife. They said a man my age shouldn't live alone. They said it wasn't natural. They brought women to meet me. Widows, divorced women. They wouldn't leave me in peace." Now Amara understood. "So you brought me here to make them stop." Baba Kofi looked at her for the first time, really looked at her. His old eyes were sad but clear. "I told them I would remarry. I went through the traditional process. I paid your father what he asked. The village is satisfied. They leave me alone now. They think you are my wife. They think I am normal again. But I'm not really your wife," Amara said slowly. "No, you are not. You are a child who was treated as property. I will not add to that sin by treating you the same way." He stood up, his joints creaking with the movement. "You will stay here. You will be safe. You will work for your keep, but nothing more. Do you understand?" Amara nodded, tears filling her eyes. But these tears were different from the ones she had cried before. These were tears of relief, of gratitude, of confused emotion she couldn't quite name. "Thank you," she whispered. Baba Kofi waved his hand dismissively. "Don't thank me. I'm still the man who bought you. That makes me part of the problem, not the solution." He walked toward his room, then paused. "But perhaps we can both survive this situation with our dignity intact." That night, Amara lay in her bed in the cottage, staring at the ceiling. She was still trapped. She was still far from home, still owned by a man she barely knew. But somehow, impossibly, she felt the tiniest bit of hope beginning to grow. Baba Kofi was not the monster she had feared. He was just a lonely old man haunted by his own ghosts, trying to live in peace. Maybe, just maybe, this situation could be bearable after all. She didn't know yet that it would become so much more than that. A month passed, then 2. Amara settled into her new life with a mixture of relief and sadness. The work kept her busy, and being busy kept her from thinking too much about what she had lost. Her education, her dreams, her childhood. Every night she would take out her school books and read them by candlelight, trying not to forget what she had learned. Mathematics, history, English. She read the same pages over and over until she had them memorized. Baba Kofi noticed, of course. He noticed everything, even when he pretended not to. One evening, as Amara was serving dinner, he spoke suddenly. "You read every night." It wasn't a question, but Amara answered anyway. "Yes, sir. I don't want to forget what I learned in school." "You liked school?" "I loved school," Amara said, and her voice cracked slightly. "I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to help other children learn. I was good at it. My teacher said I had potential." She stopped talking, embarrassed. What did it matter now what she had wanted? Baba Kofi was quiet for a long time, eating his food slowly. Then he said something that changed everything. What if you went back? Amara's head snapped up. What, to school? What if you went back to school? That's impossible, Amara said, her heart suddenly racing. My father would never allow it. The village would never accept it. And besides, there's no money for fees and uniforms and books. I have money, Baba Kofi said simply. More than I will ever need. And your father has no say anymore. He sold that right for a cow. There was bitterness in his voice, but also something else. Determination. Amara sat down, forgetting all about serving food. Are you serious? You would really let me go back to school? The regional secondary school is an hour away by motorcycle. I can take you there in the mornings and pick you up in the afternoons. You would still live here. You would still help with the household work. But during the day you would study. But why? Amara whispered. Why would you do this for me? Baba Kofi stood up and walked to the window, his back to her. For a long moment he said nothing. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. I had a daughter once, before I married Adana, a long time ago when I was young and foolish. Amara held her breath, sensing this was a story Baba Kofi had never told anyone. Her name was Zainab. Her mother and I were not married. In my village, that was a great shame. My family forced me to give the child to a distant relative. I was young. I was weak, I agreed. I gave away my own daughter to save face. His hands gripped the window frame. Years later, I tried to find her. I learned she had been married off at 15 to a much older man. She died in childbirth 6 months later. She was only 16. I'm so sorry, Amara said, tears filling her eyes. Baba Kofi turned to face her, and she saw that his eyes were wet too. I killed my daughter by my cowardice. I let tradition and shame guide me instead of love. And then I spent 30 years wishing I could go back and change it all. When Adana and I couldn't have children, I thought it was punishment for what I had done to Zainab. He walked back to the table and sat down heavily. When the elders pressured me to remarry, I saw an opportunity. I could follow tradition on the surface while breaking it in private. I could take in a girl who had been treated as property and give her something different. I cannot bring Zainab back. I cannot change what I did, but perhaps I can give you the life my daughter never had. Amara didn't know what to say. The weight of Baba Kofi's confession hung in the air between them. She understood now. This wasn't just about her. This was about him trying to find redemption for a sin that had haunted him for decades. When do I start? She asked softly. Baba Kofi looked up, surprise crossing his weathered face. You want to do this? More than anything in the world. The next week was a whirlwind of preparation. Baba Kofi took Amara into town and bought everything she needed. New uniforms, crisp and clean, shoes that actually fit, a proper school bag, notebooks and pens and textbooks. Amara felt like she was dreaming. She kept touching the uniforms, afraid they would disappear. The other shoppers stared at them. An old man buying school supplies for a young girl. She heard the whispers. Some people thought it was strange. Others thought it was inappropriate. But Baba Kofi ignored them all, his face set in stubborn determination. On the first day of school, Amara woke up before dawn, too excited to sleep. She put on her uniform with trembling hands. She had never worn anything so nice in her entire life. Baba Kofi was already waiting outside with the motorcycle. The ride to the regional school took them through 3 villages and past fields, slowly recovering from the drought. When the school building came into view, Amara's breath caught in her throat. It was bigger than she had imagined. Hundreds of students walked through the gates, laughing and talking. Are you nervous? Baba Kofi asked. Terrified, Amara admitted. Good, that means you care. He handed her the school bag. Learn everything you can. Make your mind stronger than any tradition. Make yourself impossible to silence. Amara looked at this old man who had bought her like property, and then given her back her dreams. Thank you, she said, and the words felt too small for what she meant. Don't thank me yet, Baba Kofi said. The village will not be happy about this. There will be trouble. Are you prepared for that? Amara thought about her sister Kemi, about all the other young girls in villages like hers, about the future she thought she had lost. Yes, she said firmly. I'm prepared. As she walked through the school gates, other students glanced at her curiously. She was older than the other first years, her uniform too new, her presence unexplained. But she held her head high. She had been sold. She had been treated as less than human, but she was still here. She was still fighting. In her first class, the teacher asked each student to introduce themselves and share their dreams. When it was Amara's turn, she stood up and spoke clearly. "My name is Amara. I was taken out of school and given to a man like property, but I'm back now. And one day, I'm going to make sure no other girl has to go through what I went through. I'm going to change things." The classroom went silent. Some students looked uncomfortable. Others looked inspired. The teacher nodded slowly, respect in her eyes. "Then you'd better study hard," she said. "Changing the world takes more than just wanting it. It takes knowledge and courage." "I have both," Amara said, and she meant it. That afternoon, when Baba Kofi picked her up, he asked how the day went. Amara smiled, really smiled, for the first time since leaving her village. "It was perfect," she said. "Can we go again tomorrow?" Baba Kofi chuckled, a rusty sound like he had forgotten how to laugh. "Every day, child. Every single day." As they rode home, Amara looked at the world around her with new eyes. Yes, she had been sold. Yes, tradition had treated her cruelly. But somehow out of that darkness, something light was beginning to grow. Hope had a funny way of surviving, even in the most impossible situations. She didn't know yet just how much trouble that hope would cause. News in small villages travels faster than wildfire. Within 3 days of Amara starting school, everyone in her home village knew, and they were not happy about it. Samuel was the first to hear. A neighbor came to tell him, excitement in his voice like he was delivering juicy gossip. "Your daughter? The one you gave to Baba Kofi? She's going to the regional school now, wearing a uniform and everything. Can you believe it?" Samuel's face went dark red. In front of the other villagers who had gathered to hear the news, he felt humiliated. He had sold his daughter to serve an old man, to be his wife, to obey him. Instead, she was getting privileges his own sons didn't have. His sons who still lived at home, who still went hungry sometimes despite the cow's milk. Grace's reaction was more complicated. When Samuel came home raging about the news, she said nothing. But late that night, alone in the darkness, she cried. Part of her felt shame that her daughter was being paraded around like a schoolgirl when she was supposed to be a wife. But another part of her, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, felt something like pride. Her daughter was in school. Her daughter was learning. Wasn't that what she had once wanted for all her children? But Samuel's anger was not quiet. He went to the village elders demanding they do something. "This is an insult," he shouted. "I gave my daughter in a proper traditional arrangement. Baba Kofi is making a mockery of our customs. He's supposed to be her husband, not her. Her father or teacher or whatever this is." The elders agreed. They didn't like change. They didn't like their traditions being questioned. And they especially didn't like the idea that other girls in the village might start getting ideas. If Amara could go to school after being sold, what would that mean for all the other arrangements they had blessed over the years? 3 of the elders made the journey to Baba Kofi's compound. They arrived on a hot afternoon, their faces stern and disapproving. Amara was at school, so she wasn't there to witness it. But Auntie Fatima was, and she told Amara everything later. "Baba Kofi," the chief elder said, his voice heavy with authority, "we need to discuss this situation with the girl. Her name is Amara," Baba Kofi said calmly. "And there is nothing to discuss. You have made an agreement with her father. You have gone through the traditional process. The girl is your wife. She should be here serving you, not gallivanting around in a school uniform like a child." "She is a child," Baba Kofi replied. "She is 14 years old. She is whatever you say she is. You paid for her. But you are not fulfilling your part of the arrangement. You are embarrassing her father. You are making the village look foolish." Baba Kofi stood up, his old body straightening with dignity. "I will do with my property as I see fit. Isn't that what you told Amara's father? That once the exchange was made, she belonged to me completely? Well then, I choose to educate her. That is my right." The elders didn't know how to argue with that logic. They had spent years telling families that once a girl was given in marriage, her husband had complete authority. Now that authority was being used in a way they hadn't expected. "People are talking," another elder said, his voice tight. "This is not proper. You need to bring the girl into your house. You need to consummate this marriage. Otherwise, what kind of marriage is it?" Baba Kofi's eyes went cold. "Get out of my compound now." The elders left, but the threat in their voices was clear. You will regret this. The whole village will turn against you. They weren't wrong. Over the next few weeks, life became difficult for both Baba Kofi and Amara. People stopped greeting Baba Kofi at the market. They refused to trade with him. Anonymous letters appeared at his gate, calling him shameful names, accusing him of improper behavior with a child. Amara faced her own battles at school. Word had spread about her situation, twisted and distorted through gossip. Some students whispered that she was Baba Kofi's mistress. Others said she was a charity case. A few said she was a witch who had enchanted the old man. Only a handful of students treated her normally. But Amara kept going. Every morning she put on her uniform and climbed on the back of Baba Kofi's motorcycle. Every day she sat in class and absorbed everything she could. Every evening she came home and did her household work without complaint. She was determined not to give anyone a reason to say she didn't belong. Then things escalated. Samuel, drunk on homemade alcohol and encouraged by other men in the village, decided to confront Baba Kofi directly. He showed up at the compound one evening with 5 other men, all of them angry and loud. "Give me back my daughter," Samuel shouted, pounding on the gate. "You're not treating her properly. You're making her unfit for any real marriage. Give her back!" Baba Kofi came out, calm but firm. "You sold her. You have no claim anymore. She's still my daughter. She stopped being your daughter the moment you traded her for livestock," Baba Kofi said coldly. "You made your choice. Live with it." The confrontation ended with the men leaving, but their threats hung in the air. "We'll be back," Samuel promised. "You can't shame this village and get away with it." Amara heard about it from Auntie Fatima. She felt torn. Part of her was angry at her father for causing trouble. Another part of her wondered if she was being selfish, if her education was causing too many problems. That night, she asked Baba Kofi if maybe she should stop going to school. "It's causing too much trouble," she said quietly. "Maybe it's not worth it." Baba Kofi looked at her sharply. "Is that what you really think? Or is that fear talking?" Amara didn't answer right away. Finally, she admitted, "I'm scared. What if they hurt you? What if they hurt me? What if this all falls apart?" "Then it falls apart," Baba Kofi said simply. "But at least we will have tried. At least we will have said that tradition can be wrong, that buying and selling children is wrong, that girls deserve education. If we stop now, we're telling them they were right all along. But what if they come back? What if they do something worse?" Baba Kofi pulled out an old hunting rifle from a cabinet. "Let them come. I'm an old man. I have little time left in this world. But I won't spend what time I have bowing to bullies." 3 nights later they came. Amara woke to the smell of smoke. For a confused moment she thought she was dreaming. Then she heard shouting. She ran outside her cottage and saw flames leaping from the main house. 5 men with their faces covered ran through the compound carrying torches. Amara screamed. Baba Kofi came running from the main house, coughing from the smoke. The men saw him and laughed. "Burn it all!" one of them shouted. "Teach this old fool a lesson." But Baba Kofi wasn't helpless. He raised his rifle and fired into the air. The sound was deafening. The men froze. He fired again, this time closer to them. "Get off my property!" he roared. "Get out!" The men ran, disappearing into the darkness. Neighbors, drawn by the noise and the fire, came running with buckets of water. Together they managed to put out the flames before the whole house burned down. The damage was bad but not catastrophic. The kitchen was destroyed. One wall was badly burned, but the house still stood. The village chief arrived, called by the commotion. He looked at the damage, looked at Baba Kofi, looked at Amara standing there in her nightclothes, her face streaked with soot and tears. For a long moment he said nothing. Finally he spoke. "This has gone too far. Tomorrow I will call a village meeting. This matter must be settled before someone gets killed." As the neighbors left and the night grew quiet again, Amara and Baba Kofi stood in the compound, looking at the charred remains of the kitchen. Amara was shaking, the reality of what had almost happened finally hitting her. "They tried to kill us," she whispered. "They tried to scare us," Baba Kofi corrected. "There's a difference. If they wanted us dead, they would have done it. Are you scared?" Baba Kofi looked at her, his old face illuminated by the remaining embers. "Terrified," he admitted, "but also angry and determined. They want us to give up. They want things to go back to how they were. But I'm not going to let that happen. Are you?" Amara thought about her school books, probably damaged in the fire. She thought about the uniform she had been so proud of. She thought about all the girls in villages everywhere who never got a chance because tradition said they were property. She thought about Baba Kofi's daughter Zainab, dead at 16. No, she said firmly. I'm not giving up either. They stood together in the darkness, an unlikely team. An old man haunted by his past. A young girl fighting for her future. Both of them refusing to back down, even as the whole village turned against them. The battle was just beginning. The village meeting never happened. The night after the fire, 3 women from neighboring villages came to the chief privately. They had heard about what happened to Amara and Baba Kofi. They had their own stories to share, stories about daughters sold too young, stories about girls who died in childbirth, stories about dreams destroyed by tradition. The chief, a man who had blessed dozens of such arrangements over his 30 years of leadership, found himself facing uncomfortable questions for the first time. What if the traditions he had upheld were causing more harm than good? What if this old man and this young girl were actually right? He didn't cancel his support for tradition, not publicly, but he did something equally important. He told the village that anyone who harassed Baba Kofi or Amara would face consequences. He made it clear that violence would not be tolerated. It wasn't everything, but it was something. It was enough to give them space to breathe. Amara threw herself into her studies with fierce determination. The fire had taught her something important. Her education wasn't just about her anymore. It was about proving that girls had value beyond marriage and childbearing. It was about showing that change was possible, even in places that seemed stuck in the past. She excelled in every subject. Mathematics came easily to her, the logic and patterns making perfect sense. In history, she learned about other cultures and other ways of living, realizing that her village's traditions weren't universal laws, but choices people had made. English opened up books and ideas she had never imagined. Science showed her how the world really worked beyond superstition and fear. Her teachers noticed. Mrs. Adebayo, the English teacher, pulled her aside one day. Amara, you have something special. A hunger to learn that I rarely see. Have you thought about what you want to do after secondary school? University, Amara said without hesitation. I want to study education. I want to become a teacher. I want to go back to villages like mine and teach girls who think they have no options. Mrs. Adebayo smiled. Then you need to work even harder. University scholarships are competitive. But I think you can do it. I really do. From that day on, Amara studied like her life depended on it. Because in many ways it did. Every good grade was proof that she belonged there. Every test she aced was evidence that investing in girls' education made sense. Every time she raised her hand in class and gave a brilliant answer, she was fighting against the belief that girls were only good for cooking and having babies. At home, her relationship with Baba Kofi continued to evolve. He had started teaching her about his cattle business. At first, she didn't understand why, but then he explained. I'm getting older. My health isn't what it was. You need to know how to manage money and business. You need skills beyond just schoolwork. He showed her the account books, taught her how to calculate profit and loss, how to negotiate prices at the market, how to spot a healthy animal from a sick one. Amara soaked it all in. She discovered she had a talent for numbers and business. Within months, she was helping him manage the whole operation. The villagers noticed. When Baba Kofi's health forced him to miss market day, Amara went in his place. She was only 15, but she handled the cattle sales with confidence and skill. She negotiated prices like someone twice her age. She refused to be cheated or intimidated. The traders learned quickly that this young girl knew exactly what she was doing. Word spread to other villages. People started talking about the girl who was both a student and a businesswoman. Some admired her. Others thought she was getting above her station. But no one could deny she was impressive. At school, Amara started something new. She began staying after classes to tutor younger students who were struggling. At first, it was just 1 or 2 kids. Then more came. Soon she was running informal tutoring sessions 3 times a week, helping children with mathematics and reading. One day, a girl named Blessing came to her in tears. My father says I have to leave school next month. He's arranged a marriage for me. I'm only 13. Amara felt like she had been punched in the stomach. This was exactly what had happened to her. History repeating itself. But this time she wasn't powerless. This time she could do something. Let me talk to your father, Amara said. Blessing shook her head frantically. He won't listen. He needs the bride price. We're too poor. Maybe I can help with that. Amara went to Baba Kofi that evening. I need to borrow some money. For Blessing's family. To keep her in school. Baba Kofi looked at her thoughtfully. You can't save everyone, child, I know. But I can save this one girl. Isn't that worth something? They went together to meet Blessing's father. The man was suspicious and defensive at first. But Baba Kofi spoke to him man to man, explaining that educated daughters could support families better in the long run than one-time bride prices. They offered him a loan, interest-free, to be paid back over time. They offered to help with school fees. Blessing's father agreed. It wasn't because he suddenly believed in girls' education. It was because the financial arrangement made sense. But the reason didn't matter. Blessing stayed in school. She was saved. Word of what Amara had done spread. Other students started coming to her with their problems. She couldn't solve them all. She didn't have unlimited resources. But she listened. She advised. She connected people. She became a voice for the voiceless in her own small way. But Baba Kofi's health was declining. His cough had gotten worse. He moved more slowly. Some mornings, he couldn't get out of bed at all. Amara insisted he see a doctor. The diagnosis was grim. His lungs were damaged from years of smoking and dust. The doctor said he had maybe 2 years, maybe less. Amara was devastated, but Baba Kofi was philosophical. I'm 70 years old. I've lived longer than most people in my village. I'm not afraid of death. He looked at her seriously. But I'm afraid of leaving you unprotected. We need to make legal arrangements. They traveled to the city to meet with a lawyer. Baba Kofi wanted to formally adopt Amara, to give her legal rights and protection. The lawyer explained the process. There would be paperwork. Court appearances, investigations, but it was possible. Why are you doing this? The lawyer asked, curious about their unusual situation. Because I bought her like property, Baba Kofi said bluntly, and I want to give her something better before I die. I want her to have a future that belongs to her alone. The adoption process began. It would take months to complete. But the mere fact that it was happening changed something fundamental. Amara was no longer just Baba Kofi's purchased wife in the eyes of the village. She was becoming his legal daughter. It was a transformation that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. At school, Amara's grades were exceptional. She ranked first in her entire year. The teachers spoke about her with pride. Other students looked up to her. She had become someone who mattered, someone whose voice carried weight. One afternoon, a reporter from a regional newspaper came to the school to write a story about top-performing students. They interviewed Amara. She told her story honestly. How she had been sold. How Baba Kofi had chosen to educate her instead. How she was fighting to make sure other girls didn't suffer the same fate. The reporter was fascinated. This is bigger than just a school achievement story, she said. This is about changing culture. Do you mind if I write about that? Please do, Amara said. The more people who know, the more pressure there is to change. But she didn't realize yet how big the story would become. She didn't know that her words would reach far beyond her region. She didn't know that her fight was about to go national. That night, Baba Kofi had a coughing fit so bad that Amara thought he might die right there. She stayed with him, holding his hand, giving him water, supporting his frail body. When the fit finally passed, he looked at her with eyes full of emotion. You've become something extraordinary, he whispered. My daughter Zainab would have been proud to know you. I am proud to know you. Amara's eyes filled with tears. You saved me. You gave me everything. No, Baba Kofi said softly. You saved yourself. I just gave you the opportunity. Everything else, all that you've become, that's all you. They sat together in the quiet house, the old man and the young woman, who had found purpose in each other's pain. Outside, the world was changing slowly. Too slowly for some, too fast for others. But changing nonetheless, one brave choice at a time. The newspaper article changed everything. What was supposed to be a small regional story somehow caught national attention. A bigger newspaper picked it up. Then a radio station interviewed Amara. Then a television news program featured her story. Within weeks, everyone in the country seemed to know about the girl who was sold for a cow, and the old man who chose education over tradition. Reactions were fierce and divided. Human rights groups praised Amara's courage. Women's organizations invited her to speak at events. Education advocates used her story to push for stronger laws protecting girls. But conservative groups accused her of disrespecting culture and destroying family values. Religious leaders argued both sides, some supporting her, others condemning her. In Amara's home village, the attention brought shame and anger. Samuel had become infamous as the man who sold his daughter for a cow. People pointed at him, laughed at him. His shame turned to rage. The cow was long dead now, having provided milk for 2 years before dying of disease. He had nothing to show for his decision except humiliation. Grace felt differently. Secretly, late at night, she listened to the radio interviews with her daughter. She heard Amara's voice, confident and articulate, speaking about girls' rights and education. Something inside her broke and healed at the same time. She had lost her daughter, yes, but her daughter had found herself. Wasn't that worth something? One morning, 2 years after Amara had left, Samuel woke up with a terrible decision in his mind. The cow was dead. The arrangement had been disrespected. According to traditional law, he had the right to demand either a replacement or the return of his daughter. He would go to Baba Kofi's compound and take back what was his. He didn't go alone. He brought 3 other men from the village, men who supported his claim, men who wanted to see tradition upheld. They arrived at the compound in the late morning, angry and determined. Grace had begged Samuel not to go, but he had pushed her aside. This was about his honor now, his reputation, his rights as a father. Amara was home studying for her upcoming exams. She was 16 now, taller, more confident, but still young. When she heard the commotion outside, her stomach dropped. She knew that voice. Her father's voice, loud and aggressive. "Baba Kofi, come out here. The cow is dead. Our agreement is void. I'm taking back my daughter." Amara ran outside before Baba Kofi could respond. She saw her father, saw the anger in his face, saw the other men behind him. For a moment, she was 14 again, scared and powerless. But only for a moment. Then something stronger rose up inside her. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Samuel looked at his daughter, barely recognizing her. She stood straight and tall, wearing her school uniform, her eyes fierce and unafraid. "You don't have a choice. You're my daughter. You belong to me." "I don't belong to anyone," Amara said. "You sold that claim 2 years ago. You chose a cow over your own child. You don't get to change your mind now. Don't you dare speak to me that way. I'm your father. You stopped being my father the day you traded me like livestock." Amara's voice grew stronger, louder. People from nearby houses were starting to gather, drawn by the shouting. "You want to know what happened to your precious cow? It died, just like your daughter died the day you sold her. You can't have either of us back." Samuel lunged forward, trying to grab Amara's arm, but Baba Kofi stepped between them. The old man was frail now, his health deteriorating, but he stood firm. "Touch her and I'll have you arrested. She's under my legal protection now." "Legal protection?" Samuel laughed bitterly. "What legal protection?" "She's my flesh and blood." "Actually," a new voice said, and everyone turned. A man in a suit stood at the gate carrying a briefcase. The lawyer from the city. "She's legally his daughter now. The adoption was finalized last week." "I have the documents right here." The crowd gasped. Adoption, that changed everything. Baba Kofi pulled out the official papers, holding them up for everyone to see. "Amara is my daughter now, legally, officially. You have no claim to her. If you try to take her, you'll be guilty of kidnapping." Samuel stood there stunned. He had expected resistance. He had expected argument. But he hadn't expected this. Legal adoption. Official papers. His daughter was no longer his daughter at all. "This is wrong," he said, but his voice had lost its strength. "This goes against everything our culture stands for." "Your culture," Amara said, stepping forward again, "sells children. Your culture treats girls like property. Your culture values cows more than daughters. I'm not proud of that culture. I'm ashamed of it," the crowd murmured, some in agreement, others in shock at her boldness. An older woman stepped forward. "The girl speaks truth that we don't want to hear. How many daughters have we lost? How many girls have died too young? Maybe it's time to ask if our traditions are really serving us or just hurting our children." Another woman joined her. "My sister was married at 13. She died at 15 giving birth. For what? For tradition? For honor? She's gone and all we have is grief." More voices rose up. Women who had been silent for so long suddenly finding courage in Amara's stand. Not everyone agreed. Many still supported Samuel and the old ways. But the fact that there was debate at all was significant. Doubt had been planted. Samuel looked around at the divided crowd, at his daughter who stood like a stranger, at the legal documents that destroyed his claim. He had come for victory and found only defeat. "You've turned my own daughter against me," he said to Baba Kofi. "No," Baba Kofi replied. "You did that yourself when you valued a cow more than her future." Samuel's face twisted with rage and pain. He grabbed a rock from the ground. For a terrible moment, everyone thought he might throw it. But then Grace's voice cut through the tension. "Stop." She had followed her husband, staying back at first, but now she pushed through the crowd. "Samuel, stop this, please, just stop." Samuel looked at his wife, the rock still in his hand. "She's our daughter." "She was our daughter," Grace said, tears streaming down her face. "But we gave her away. We made that choice. We don't get to unmake it just because we regret it now." She turned to Amara, seeing her clearly for the first time in 2 years. "You've become something I never imagined. Something strong and brave. I'm sorry for what we did. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. But I'm glad. I'm glad you survived. I'm glad you found a better life." Amara felt tears running down her own face. She had tried to hate her mother, tried to feel nothing. But seeing Grace now, seeing the regret and pain and strange pride in her eyes, Amara felt something crack open inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. "I have 2 younger brothers and a sister who still need you," Amara said quietly. "Be better parents to them than you were to me. Don't sell them. Don't treat them as property. Learn from your mistakes." Grace nodded, unable to speak. She reached out as if to touch Amara's face, then pulled her hand back, knowing she had no right. "I will," she whispered. "I promise I will." Samuel dropped the rock. All the fight seemed to drain out of him suddenly. He looked old and tired and defeated. Without another word, he turned and walked away. The other men followed, their support for him evaporating. Grace stood there a moment longer, looking at her daughter one last time, then followed her husband home. The crowd slowly dispersed, people talking in hushed voices about what they had witnessed. Some thought Amara was a hero. Others thought she was a rebellious child who had disrespected her parents. But everyone agreed on one thing. Nothing like this had ever happened in their villages before. Baba Kofi put his arm around Amara's shoulders, and she leaned against him, exhausted. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," Amara admitted. "I thought I wanted to scream at him, to make him feel all the pain he caused me. But now I just feel empty and sad, and angry, and relieved. Everything all at once, that's normal. You faced your past today. That takes incredible courage. Will he come back?" "No," Baba Kofi said with certainty. "He has no legal claim now. And more importantly, he knows he's lost. Men like your father, they can't handle losing. He'll stay away now, nursing his wounded pride." As they walked back into the house, Amara realized something had fundamentally changed today. She had faced the man who sold her. She had stood up to him publicly. She had claimed her own identity and her own future. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was truly free. That night, the lawyer stayed for dinner. He explained that the media attention from Amara's story had prompted some lawmakers to propose stronger legislation against child marriage. "Your courage has started a conversation this country needed to have," he said. "Change is coming. Slowly, but it's coming." Amara looked at Baba Kofi, at this old man who had given her everything when he could have taken everything. "We did this together," she said. "Both of us. You showed me what redemption looks like. You showed me that people can choose to be better than tradition demands." Baba Kofi smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. They both knew his time was limited. His cough had gotten worse. His energy was fading. But he had lived long enough to see this. Long enough to see Amara free, strong, and unbreakable. "I can die happy now," he said quietly. "Don't talk like that," Amara said. But she knew it was true. The battle had been won, but the war for change was just beginning, and soon she would have to fight it without. 3 months after the confrontation with her father, Amara's life became something she never could have imagined. The journalist who had first written about her story came back, this time for a documentary. A film crew arrived at Baba Kofi's compound, cameras and equipment everywhere. They wanted to show Amara's daily life, her studies, her work with Baba Kofi's cattle business, everything. The documentary aired on national television on a Friday evening. Millions of people watched. They saw a poised 17-year-old girl who spoke eloquently about tradition, poverty, and the value of girls' education. They saw Baba Kofi, frail but dignified, explaining why he chose redemption over tradition. They saw the village, the school, the reality of life for girls in rural areas. The response was overwhelming. The television station's phone lines jammed with calls. Social media exploded with hashtags about Amara's story. Some praised her, some criticized her, but everyone was talking. The conversation about child marriage, which had been whispered about in corners, was now happening openly in homes, schools, and government offices across the nation. Human rights organizations contacted Amara within days. They wanted her to speak at conferences, to meet with policymakers, to be the face of their campaigns against child marriage. At first, Amara was terrified. She was still in school, still studying for exams, still just a girl from a small village. How could she speak to powerful people about changing laws? But Baba Kofi encouraged her. You have lived this reality. You have survived it. Your voice carries a weight that no politician or activist can match. Speak your truth. Let others listen or not, that's their choice. But speak. Amara's first speaking engagement was at a women's conference in the capital city. She had never been to such a big city before. The buildings were taller than trees. Cars filled the streets. Thousands of people rushed everywhere. She felt like a tiny fish in an endless ocean. The conference hall held 300 people. Educators, activists, lawyers, government officials, all of them waiting to hear from her. Amara walked onto the stage, her legs shaking, her prepared speech suddenly feeling inadequate. She looked out at all those faces and almost ran. Then she remembered. She remembered being 14, terrified, traded for a cow. She remembered all the girls like her who never got a second chance. She remembered Baba Kofi's daughter, Zainab, dead at 16. She remembered why she was here. My name is Amara, she began, her voice quiet at first but growing stronger. 2 years ago, my parents sold me to a 67-year-old man in exchange for a cow. I was 14 years old. I thought my life was over. For the next 20 minutes, she told her story. Not the sanitized version from the documentary, but the raw, honest truth. She talked about the fear, the shame, the desperate hunger that had driven her parents to make that choice. She talked about Baba Kofi's unexpected kindness. She talked about fighting for her education while the whole village turned against her. I was lucky, she said, her voice ringing through the silent hall. I was bought by a man who chose to be better than tradition demanded. But what about all the girls who aren't lucky? What about the ones who are bought by men who see them only as property? What about the ones who die in childbirth before they're old enough to vote? We can't rely on luck. We need laws. We need enforcement. We need change. The room erupted in applause. Women stood up, wiping tears from their eyes. Amara saw men in suits nodding seriously, taking notes. When she left the stage, people surrounded her, wanting to shake her hand, to thank her, to tell her their own stories. One woman, elegantly dressed and in her 40s, grabbed Amara's hands. I was sold at 12, she whispered. I escaped years later, but I never forgot. Thank you for speaking for all of us who couldn't speak for ourselves. After that first conference, invitations poured in. Schools wanted her to talk to students. Universities invited her to panel discussions. Radio stations requested interviews. Amara tried to balance it all with her studies, but it was becoming impossible. She was exhausted, traveling between her school, speaking events, and home. Baba Kofi noticed. You're burning yourself out, he said one evening as she collapsed at the dinner table, her homework untouched. I have to, Amara said. While people are listening, I have to speak. This moment might not last. The moment will last longer if you don't collapse from exhaustion. You can't pour from an empty cup, he was right, and Amara knew it. She started being more selective about which invitations she accepted. She focused on opportunities that would create real change, not just publicity. Speaking to lawmakers, meeting with education officials, training other young advocates to tell their own stories. One of the most powerful moments came when Amara returned to her own village to speak at the community center. Many people refused to attend, including her father, but some came out of curiosity. Others came to mock her. A few came because they were genuinely interested in what she had to say. Amara stood in front of her former neighbors and spoke honestly. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm not here to judge the parents who made impossible choices. I know poverty makes people desperate. I know tradition feels like the only solid ground when everything else is falling apart. But I'm here to say there are other ways. Better ways. She told them about the fund she had started with donations from her speaking fees. A small fund, but real money that could help families in crisis. Instead of selling your daughters, come to us. We'll help you find alternatives. Microloans for small businesses. Support for keeping kids in school. Agriculture training. We can't solve everything, but we can try. An old woman in the back stood up. What if we already sold our daughters? What if it's too late? Amara's heart broke, but she kept her voice steady. Then we make sure it doesn't happen to the next generation. We learn, we change, we do better. Over the next few months, Amara's fund grew. Donors from across the country, even from other countries, sent money. They bought livestock for struggling families, paid school fees for at-risk girls, provided business training for mothers. It wasn't a perfect solution. It couldn't help everyone, but it was something. It was hope made tangible. The government finally took action. A new law was proposed, strengthening penalties for child marriage and providing economic support for vulnerable families. It wasn't perfect legislation. It had loopholes, but it was a start. And Amara was invited to testify before the parliamentary committee considering the law. She stood in the grand parliamentary building, facing lawmakers who had the power to change the country. She told them her story again, but this time she also presented data, statistics about child marriage rates, information about the economic cost of losing girls to early marriage, evidence from other countries where similar laws had been successful. Change this law, she concluded, and you change the future for thousands of girls. Keep things as they are, and you're telling those girls that they don't matter, that their dreams, their lives, their futures are worth less than tradition and comfort. I know what it feels like to be told you don't matter. I'm asking you, begging you to tell girls they do matter. Tell them their lives have value beyond what they can provide for men. 3 months later, the law passed. Not by a huge margin, and with many amendments that weakened it, but it passed. Selling girls into marriage became explicitly illegal with real jail time for violators. Support programs were funded. Education initiatives were expanded. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. Amara cried when she heard the news. Baba Kofi, now very ill and confined to bed most days, smiled when she told him. You did it, he whispered. You actually did it. We did it, Amara corrected. You and me together. But Baba Kofi was fading. His cough had turned into something worse. The doctor said his lungs were failing. He had weeks, maybe days. Amara stopped accepting speaking engagements. She stopped traveling. She stayed home taking care of the man who had given her everything. They spent those final weeks talking. About life, about regrets, about hopes for the future. Baba Kofi made Amara promise to keep fighting, to keep speaking, to keep pushing for change even when it seemed impossible. Promise me you'll finish your education, he said one evening, his voice barely a whisper. Promise me you'll become that teacher you dreamed of being. Promise me you'll help other girls find their voices like you found yours. I promise, Amara said, holding his frail hand. I promise all of it. Baba Kofi smiled. Good, then I can rest easy. I've done what I needed to do. I've found my redemption through you. You gave me my freedom, Amara said, tears running down her face. No, Baba Kofi corrected gently. I gave you an opportunity. You took that opportunity and turned it into a revolution. That was all you. I'm just glad I lived long enough to see it. 3 days later, in the early morning hours, Baba Kofi passed away peacefully in his sleep. Amara was there holding his hand. She felt the moment his spirit left, felt the stillness that followed. She sat there for a long time, saying goodbye to the man who had been her owner, her protector, her teacher, her father, in all the ways that mattered. The funeral was huge. People came from villages all over the region. Some came to pay respects to the man they had known for decades. Others came because they had heard about what he had done for Amara. The media was there too, of course. After Baba Kofi's death, Amara threw herself into her studies with renewed determination. She was 18 now, in her final year of secondary school. The grief was heavy, but she channeled it into purpose. Every A she earned, every test she topped, was a tribute to the man who had believed in her when no one else did. The lawyer who had helped with the adoption returned with surprising news. Baba Kofi had left everything to Amara in his will. The house, the land, the cattle, the bank accounts, everything. At 18 years old, Amara owned property worth more than most people in her region would see in a lifetime. Some villagers were outraged. They claimed Amara had manipulated the old man, that she had stolen what should have gone to his distant relatives. But the will was legal and clear. Baba Kofi had been of sound mind when he wrote it. He wanted Amara to have the means to continue her work and her education. The court upheld the will without question. Amara didn't keep it all for herself. She couldn't, that wasn't who she was. She sold some of the cattle and used the money to expand her fund for at-risk girls. She converted part of Baba Kofi's compound into a small community center where girls could study, learn skills, and find support. She hired Auntie Fatima to run it, paying her a fair salary. But then, 3 weeks before her final exams, disaster struck in a way Amara never expected. It was late at night, almost midnight. Amara was studying when she smelled smoke for the second time in her life. Not again, she thought, her heart racing. Not again. She ran outside and saw flames leaping from the community center building. But this time it wasn't just fire. She heard shouting, crashing, the sound of destruction. Someone was deliberately destroying everything. Amara ran toward the building, screaming for help. Neighbors emerged from their houses. Some came with buckets of water. Others called the police. In the chaos and firelight, Amara saw a figure running from the flames. She would recognize that gait anywhere. Her father. Samuel was trying to escape into the darkness, but Grace appeared from nowhere, blocking his path. "Stop!" she screamed at her husband. "Stop this madness! What are you doing?" Samuel pushed her aside, but she grabbed his arm. They struggled. Other men arrived and restrained Samuel until the police came. He fought them, wild-eyed and desperate, shouting about justice and revenge. About his rights that had been stolen. About the shame Amara had brought on his family. The police arrested him on the spot. The fire was extinguished, but the damage was severe. The community center was half destroyed. Computers donated by an NGO were burned. Books were ash. 2 years of work, gone in one night of rage. At the police station, Samuel confessed everything. He had been planning it for weeks, he said. Watching the compound, waiting for the right moment. He had wanted to destroy what Amara had built, to take from her the way she had taken from him. He showed no remorse, only anger. The trial happened quickly. The evidence was overwhelming. Multiple witnesses, Samuel's own confession, security footage from a neighbor's camera. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison for arson, destruction of property, and attempted harm. Samuel showed no emotion as the sentence was read. He just stared at Amara with cold, hard eyes. But the real shock came from Grace. As Samuel was being led away, Grace approached the prosecutor. "I need to testify," she said. "I have something to say." Everyone was confused. The trial was over, but Grace insisted it was important. The judge, intrigued, allowed it. Grace took the stand, her hands shaking, her voice barely above a whisper at first. "I was 14 when I was married to Samuel," she began, and the courtroom went silent. "My father sold me to him for 3 goats and some grain. I had no choice. I cried for weeks. I begged to go back to school, but no one listened. Girls didn't matter. Our dreams didn't matter." She looked directly at Amara, tears streaming down her face. "When we sold Amara, I told myself it was different. I told myself we had no choice because of the drought and the hunger. But the truth is, I was just repeating what was done to me. I was passing on the same pain I had suffered. And I've lived with that guilt every single day since." Grace turned to the judge. "My husband is not a monster. He's a product of a system that taught him girls are property. That taught him his honor matters more than his daughter's future. That taught him violence is an acceptable response to shame. He needs punishment, yes, but he also needs help, we all do. This whole culture needs to change." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Even Samuel had stopped struggling, staring at his wife in shock. He had never heard her speak like this. In 24 years of marriage, she had been quiet, obedient, invisible. Now she was standing in front of everyone, revealing the truth they had both kept hidden. The judge was moved by Grace's testimony. It didn't change Samuel's sentence, but it did something else. It put the entire system on trial. The judge made a statement from the bench that would be quoted in newspapers across the country. "This case is not just about one man's crime," the judge said. "It's about a culture that treats girls as commodities, that values tradition over humanity, that allows poverty to justify abuse. We can imprison Samuel for his actions, but that won't solve the deeper problem. Real justice requires all of us to examine our beliefs and change our behaviors. After the trial, Grace approached Amara outside the courthouse. They hadn't spoken properly since that day at Baba Kofi's compound, when Samuel had tried to take Amara back. Grace looked older now, worn down by years of hardship and the weight of her confession. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Grace said quietly. "I know what we did to you was unforgivable, but I needed you to know that I see it now. I understand what we took from you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Amara looked at her mother, this woman who had given her life and then traded it away. Amara felt a complicated mix of emotions: anger, sadness, pity, understanding. She couldn't forgive, not fully. The wound was too deep. But she could see that Grace was also a victim of the same system that had hurt Amara. "How are Kemi and the boys?" Amara asked. Grace's face softened. "They're good. Kemi is in school. I made sure of that. And the boys, too. I won't let what happened to you happen to them. I promised you that, and I meant it." "Good," Amara said. "That's good." She paused, then added, "I can't have you in my life, Mother. Not now, maybe not ever. The hurt is too deep. But I'm glad you're doing better by them." "They deserve that," Grace nodded, tears falling freely now. "That's more than I deserve from you. Thank you for even speaking to me." She started to walk away, then turned back. "I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be. But I watch you on television, I hear about the work you're doing, and I'm proud. You became everything I should have fought for you to become." Amara watched her mother walk away, disappearing into the crowd outside the courthouse. She didn't know if she would ever see her again. Part of her hoped she would. Part of her hoped she wouldn't. Healing, she was learning, wasn't a straight line. It was messy and complicated and sometimes impossible, but there was no time to dwell on family drama. Amara had work to do. The community center needed to be rebuilt. Her final exams were in 2 weeks, and she had received a letter that would change everything. The letter was from the National University, the most prestigious school in the country. They were offering her a full scholarship to study education. Full tuition, room and board, even a living stipend. They had followed her story, seen her advocacy work, witnessed her academic excellence. They wanted her. Amara read the letter 3 times, unable to believe it was real. University. A real university education. She had dreamed of this, but dreams and reality were 2 different things. Now it was happening. Actually happening. She visited Baba Kofi's grave with the letter. She sat on the ground next to his headstone and read it aloud to him. "We did it," she whispered. "Everything you hoped for me. It's all coming true." She cried, wishing he could be there to see it, wishing she could thank him one more time. The final exams came and went. Amara scored the highest marks in her entire region. The newspapers celebrated her again. From sold child to top student, the headlines read. It was reductive, turning her whole life into a simple narrative. But if it inspired other girls, Amara could live with it. Before leaving for university, Amara organized a big community meeting. She invited everyone from the surrounding villages. Hundreds of people came, curious about what she had to say. Amara stood before them, no longer a scared 14-year-old, but a confident young woman with a mission. 3 years ago, I was sold to Baba Kofi for a cow, she began. Many of you witnessed it. Some of you approved. Some of you looked away. A few of you felt uncomfortable but said nothing. I don't blame you. We were all trapped in a system that told us this was normal, that this was tradition, that this was just how things were. She looked around at the faces, seeing a mix of shame, defiance, and curiosity. But things are changing. The law has changed. And more importantly, our hearts are changing. I want to tell you about what I'm building here. She explained her vision. The community center would be rebuilt bigger and better. It would offer free tutoring for girls who needed academic support. It would provide vocational training for women who wanted to start businesses. It would have a library, computers, a safe space for girls to learn and dream.